The Penre Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The Third Level of Learning. http://wespenre.com. The Third Level of Learning. Paper Number 3, Channeled Entities Part 2, Channeling the Greys. By Penre, Wednesday, February 20, 2013. http://wespenre.com. Part 3. 2.3. The Collective We. Who are they? So where do the harvesters of souls come into the picture? This is a very interesting question, and I am not sure if the reader has figured it out yet or not. If not, no problem, because this is all tricky and quite manipulative. Have you ever wondered why almost all these channeled sources call themselves we? We are the Cassiopeans. We are the Elohim. We are the Zeta Reticuli. We are the Pleiadians. I can go on and on. Then we have IMRA, which is singular. However, RA explained to us that they are a social memory complex, and therefore a group consciousness, and that's what most of these channeled entities call themselves, group consciousness. But what does that really mean? Well, they tell us that this is natural evolution, and we present time humans will eventually be a group consciousness as well. Then they go on telling us that they are of 5th, 6th, 7th density, or whatever it may be, and when we reach the same level as they are at, we will be like them. But first, we must be subjected to a harvest before reaching each new density, and the harvest from 3rd to 4th density is now. So we'd better be prepared and have our heart chakras open, right? What happens is that many people stress out and ask themselves over and over, am I good enough? Will I be part of the harvest, or am I doomed? There is a lot of fear involved in this harvest process. As we shall see, there is this future human hybrid who tells us through Lisa Royal that machine technology is the natural way to evolve, and we need help to do it, help from those who know how to use nanotechnology. That is true for them, because they may not know better, but it's a lie. A species can, and is supposed to, evolve on their own, without external help. Now, let's think about it. Who else do we know who think of themselves as we, a collective, or a beehive community where the group is everything and the individual next to nothing? Ah! The Greys. So who can all these channeled sources be? You got it. They all have to be Greys, there is no other logical option. They all say 1, they are us in the future, 2, a group consciousness, 3, they are all giving us the same message, but from slightly different angles, so they can attract more truth seekers, and 4, they are able to channel love and light in huge quantities, which is done by machine technology, which we shall see later in this paper, while still sounding like monotonous machines, and 5, they all hope we'll make it through the harvest, so we can be like them. But why the harvest? Well, it's obvious that they want to change things on their future timeline, which ended up with the Basher group consciousness. In other words, they failed and are now coming back from different places in time and space to start all over again. They want a soul, that's what they want, and they want evolved souls. Why wouldn't they? They want as many spiritually evolved people gathered together as possible, focusing on one thing, the harvest. Then, when the harvest is happening, after this lifetime is over, they hijack our souls, steal our fire and try to figure out our emotion by researching our light bodies. And God knows what else they have planned to do with these people in the ether whom they subject to the harvest. We need to remember that the Greys don't necessarily look at themselves as evil, they simply want to survive, and we are their guinea pigs. They have no emotions and no remorse, so they can't see that it would be something wrong with using evolved souls, trying to figure out how they work. Even the Pleiadians say they are a collective. They are different, however, in that they want to stop the Greys' experiments, and they give us the option how to not participate in this quite horrendous future by creating an alternative timeline. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up being Greys as well, but are a splinter group who is hoping that they can ride on the wave we create when we naturally build a new future without being dependent upon technology. I am not saying this is the case, but it's a possibility. If so, they are still correct, because that's the way out. Yes, the Pleiadians say they are us in the future as well, but rather than saying they are the Greys, they claim to be those who mated with human women and created the Nephilim, but also contributed with their DNA, which is still in our bodies, in other words, the fallen angels. Therefore they are us in the future, and also our ancestors. So, that's a paradox, but like Hironi says, the quote is at the end of this paper, when we get into paradoxes, we are getting closer to the truth. And where are the Syrian alliance in all this? It looks like the tyranny and the machine people, the Greys, are related to humans, not Syrians. This may be so, but let's say something happens in the future, and the Syrians need to step back for a while and say, we didn't do it, it's the humans. They did it. And whatever created that situation forced the Zeta/Grey hybrids, the future humans, to rectify their past before they once again can be used for Syrian purposes. We know very little about what will happen in the future, and all we have here is the Greys' stories, and they are not complete. They simply tell it from the viewpoint of their searching for their holy grail, human emotions and sexuality. Another possibility is that the future humans/Greys are in fact controlled by the Syrians all the way through, even in the Greys' attempt to rectify themselves. Perhaps the Syrians are not happy either with how we humans turn out 2,000 to 10,000 years from now, and are indeed in charge of the Zeta program to recreate the human race in our present time and forward. The harvest would in that case be a part of that whole scheme. I would not be surprised if it ends up being this way. When I think about it, the only channeled source that comes to mind which is not a Hive community is the Seth material by Jane Roberts. Seth is one individual, and I strongly recommend Jane's books, they are very enlightening. And I am pretty sure Seth is not a Grey. As long as we are in our current bodies, we can only raise our frequency so much during one lifetime. However, if we do what we can, become an inspiration for others, and continue to work on yourselves, that's the best we can do. Then, when our bodies die, and we eventually come back to Earth again, if this is what we decide to do, we will incarnate in a version of the world that matches our new frequency. Then, the next time around, it gets a little better again, and so forth. We will get ideas, or get together in groups to create whatever communities we wish to live in. The global elite, the Syrians, or whomever is on their wavelength, will probably still be here the first few lifetimes, because they still match the range of frequency we are operating within. However, each lifetime we will incarnate on a version of the Earth that has a higher frequency range than that of the previous lifetime, and soon enough those who do not vibrate within the same range will not be able to live in the same reality as we do. Then, perhaps a few incarnations or so from now, we will be born on an Earth where the global elite, the Syrians, and humans who vibrate within their frequency band, will no longer exist in our world. The ones who do exist there are people quite similar to us, who are more into expressing love, compassion, and understanding. Our reality will be less and less dense. This doesn't mean that the Syrians and the global elite have lost their stronghold, they will still be here on Earth, doing their thing, but in another reality, because of the difference in frequencies. However, the negative forces and the humans who chose to follow them will not move to a world, thousands of light years away, like the channeled sources suggest, but will still be here, on a lower frequency version of Earth. Albeit, if the Syrians get it the way they want it, some people probably will be moved to another planet. We can only speculate. Now, many of us will not return to Earth for a very long time after this lifetime is over. Does that come as a shock? Well, we are the forerunners, and our job is to build the energy so that the rest of humanity can make their choices based on a knowledge base that will soon come more and more to the surface in the mass consciousness. Those who wake up due to our work will be the ones who build the new Earth, the one which will eventually not be able to house the lower vibrational invader forces with their global control. When our job is done, it's time for many of us to move on. Of course, there will be those among us who still choose to stay here and come back again after this lifetime is over and help building this new world, and that's a very noble thing to do. And there are those among us who look forward to living in the new world, because Mother Earth, the goddess, is after all one of the most beautiful planets in the Milky Way galaxy, and am sure it will be even more beautiful when experienced from a higher dimension. 3. Understanding more about the Grey Hive mentality. If we take everything else we've discussed in regards to the channeled visitors and add what Lissa Royal and Keith Priest have put together in their book Visitors from Within to the soup as well, we get an even closer picture. Hence, I have selected a few sections from the Royal/Priest book to quote and/or analyze and discuss before I finish this paper. We talked about the agreement between the Zetas and the U.S. government in the 1950s, which resulted in a TTP, allowing the Zetas to abduct humans, especially in the United States. This was done by a faction of the Zetas, which the rest of them call the negative faction, but the rest, if they want to call themselves the positive faction, have not hesitated to take advantage of that program. Although the positive faction doesn't deliver technology to the government at this time, but will in the future, they sometimes refer to this program to justify the abduction scenarios, and the way things transformed on that day back in the 50s, the Zetas do have right to take us, according to universal laws. However, what the positive faction likes to address more frequently is the voluntarily program, where humans, either between lives or otherwise, agree to help the Zetas regain their human abilities in the future, and thus also safeguard their own future existence, or so they think. We have no solid evidence that this is the Greys' real agenda, although it seems to at least be one of them, but also, it looks like the Greys will not succeed, either, because when humankind decided to become half machine and half human, there was no way back. After that it seems like they will have a peak in their efforts when the Essassani race is created, but after that an eerie silence. Also, the Essassani race is being created very far away into the future, so it sure will take the Greys a lot of time even to get to that point, and still they will not be like we are now, because they lack most of their fire. That's why we say they are soulless. They are clones, left only with a machine-like brain which is half physical and half etheric, and a soul that seems hopelessly depleted from its fire due to that the Syrians have used it up, and that's a long way from a soul. The Essassani, however, seem to have managed to create bodies which are good enough to work as soul carriers, and they can even nano-travel, but they can't regain an emotional state of mind. The agreement the so-called positive faction wants to stress is the following. There is an agreement between our species. You are teaching us about the love we supposedly have within us that we want to unlock, and how not to fear our own individuality. We are teaching you about your fears and how you can turn those fears into your strengths. Our relationship is a symbiotic one, for we are all part of the same whole. I find this particularly interesting, because Prince U2, when he contacted me, said basically the same thing, that our relationship is symbiotic in nature, and we are all part of the same whole. The Greys further comment. There are many who protest what is occurring with abductions and genetic experiments. Those who protest can only protest when they feel they are victims. Those who feel they are not victims will not protest. Do you follow what we mean? The act of protestation means that in some way there must be a feeling of victimization. There is some twisted logic in this statement, if we really look at it. It is their conviction that it's not only when an abductee protests that the above applies, but also if someone like you and I do it, they want us to realize that we feel like victims and need to change our mentality. This is very similar to Hidden Hand's logic, as well. What about if we don't agree when we see someone who can't defend themselves being carried away and experimented upon? Is that victimhood, or is it caring about another, defenseless individual? Even if that individual does have an agreement somewhere down the line, agreements should be allowed to be changed and re-evaluated. In this case they can't, because once you make an individual agreement with them and want to break it, the Zetas are referring to the government agreement, and thus the individual has no longer any say in the matter. That's the twisted logic. Anybody has the right to say no, but the abductees don't know how, and the Zetas are certainly not teaching them. All the abductees need to say is something to the effect, I understand that we may have had a one-on-one agreement once upon a time, and I may even transmit on an unconscious level that I still am part of this agreement, but I am telling you here and now that our contract is void. I no longer want to take part in this experiment, and I don't want to encounter you again. So now, bring me back where you took me and leave without coming back again. Some may argue that this is us in the future, so we owe it to ourselves to set things straight, but people don't understand that all they need to do is to choose another reality now, in the present. If they change their belief systems, they choose another timeline. This may in the long run lead to the termination of the grey timeline, but in my opinion, that's what needs to be done. If not, our future is going to become a living hell, at least for those who choose to become mesmerized by Syrian technology. Bashar says that we are moving towards a time when we much more openly and freely choose to confront that which we fear. He is correct in this, but if we do what they want, it will just slingshot us right into the machine kingdom. I must say I like to listen to Bashar, he or they, rather, as they are a social memory complex, have some very empowering information to give us, and these Sasani Greys may even have good intentions, seen from their perspective. They have even gained a good sense of humor. However, it is in their interest that we choose a certain timeline, or they may cease to exist in our future. This is most probably the real reason why they are here. They know the intentions of the less evolved Greys and know that if things are not going in the right direction this time around, things may be worse for the Sasani as well. They want to go further in their development, as well as we want to go further with ours. It's up to each person to choose. I simply lay out the stepping stones and what the consequences most possibly will be when we follow one or the other, or any alternatives thereof. You see, these Greys, I've noticed, have the same philosophy as I have, because it's just how metaphysics works. Bashar says that the contact with the Greys will lead to a personal transformation on a widespread level, and then lead to species transformation, very similar to what I want, but without nanotechnology. So it really boils down to in what direction we put our thoughts, intentions, emotions, and actions. Our future depends on it, as the reader can clearly see. If we agree to help the Greys out of the mess they're in, we humans are creating it, we'll also continue the slavery we are experiencing right now, but it will become worse and really won't resolve much, from what I can see. The Sasani are definitely not the solution, in my opinion. But now, at the end of the old era, we get a new chance to start all over and create a new future, and I doubt we get another chance in a very long time. Right now, as we speak, and this has been going on for a while, members of the Zeta community are incarnating in human bodies with an agreement they have with their own to be abducted and experimented on from early childhood and throughout life. This is another type of agreement, and is the only reason these Zetas are incarnating on this planet in human bodies. Obviously, this doesn't work either, because the Zetas don't understand the nature of the human soul. If they incarnate in a human body with the little individual consciousness they have left, they will never figure out how it all works, because they exclude the human fire from the equation, just like our own scientists do. Sex is of course another thing they want to be able to re-explore. Therefore, from another dimension, they are spying on humans having sex without the humans knowing about it. Hearing about this, people in the audience protest and say this is an intrusion of privacy, but again the Zetas say they only do it with people who respond with their wavelength, and therefore are part of their project. To them, there is no difference between a conscious decision on the part of the human, or a sub or unconscious response. The Greys respond to the part of the human mind which is the loudest at the moment. Their goal for now is to be able to have sex with a human. They say they can do that already now, even without having any genitals, because according to them, they can manifest a penis by just using their thoughts, and even have sex. However, they are not able to get the sensations a human gets in that situation, and they can't make a female pregnant. Hironi explains that the Zetas are here in our local space, in what they call interdimensional space, and all they need is the flip of a switch in order to enter our reality and time continuum. But interestingly enough, none of them can nano-travel naturally until they reach the Sasani stage in their development. Before that, the Zetas are nano-traveling with the help of nanotechnology. This is partly what the current investment in this technology will lead to. We will discuss nanotechnology much more in one of the last papers, and I'm sure the reader will find that interesting. I am going to explain it in a very simple way, so people can really understand it. But bottom line is that when people see Zetas go through walls, they usually do this with help of technology, and not because they can do it as a part of their natural evolvement, which we who choose to evolve naturally are going to be able to do in the near future. With machine technology, they can also slightly change the vibration of the abductee, so they vibrate on a different frequency than the solid wall, and thus the grays can lead them through solid objects. This, too, is coming from the horse's mouth. Many of the future Zetas are half etheric, like I said before, and Hironi confirms what I told you earlier in my papers, that we humans have a tendency to call everything non-physical which we can't see, or perceive with our five senses, but Hironi says that what we call non-physical can be very physical in other dimensions, it's just in other light and sound frequencies. Furthermore, they are talking about the 60% group versus the 40% group, where the 60% are the meta group, and we're talking about visitors here. They explain that the 60% group are of a slightly higher dimension and density and are able to shape-shift by changing their vibratory frequency, so we perceive them as something different from what they really are. The 40% are more truly physical, which means 3D beings. These two groups represent present and future visitors to Earth. Interestingly enough, some of the 60% they call the Metalyrans, Pleiadians, and Metaterrans. The Lyrans, without any doubts, the way Hironi, Sasha, and Germain describe them, are the same old Syrians under another guise. So, in other words, they are talking about the Syrian alliance as those who can manipulate energy in the above ways, just like I've said many times before. The Metaterrans are future humans whom the Syrians have taught how to do this. There are most probably already those who can. We know for a fact that the old shamans could do it in the ancient past, without technology. In the previous section, I said that the story about Apex is at least partly the story about we humans. For those who are interested, I want to give you the whole conversation where Sasha, the female Pleiadian who is working with the Greys, is telling us this. Keith, who is asking the questions, is Keith Priest, co-author to the book. Keith, obviously the Zetas are not truly alien to humanity. There has to be a deep connection that brings the two species together. It is a reunification of something in a unique way to create something new. I would go so far as to say that those who had a hand in engineering the humans also had a hand in engineering the Zetas. How else could it be? Sasha, yes, that race would be called the Founders, and you discussed them in your book The Prism of Lyra. We would also like to bring up an issue that has been debated many times in your past about who, exactly, the Zetas are. In Visitors from Within, the Apexians were discussed as being the species who became the Zetas. It has also been debated by others that the Zetas are really humans coming from the future to influence yourselves. Keith, considering the nature of time and space, couldn't it be both? Sasha, absolutely yes. Many people would feel that they need a definitive, either/or answer. Are the Zetas Apexians, a race outside of yourselves, or are they future humans, a literal aspect of yourselves returning to heal its past and change its future? It does not have to be one or the other. In fact, because reality is cyclical and not linear, a definitive answer does not make sense. It is both. Therein lies the paradox. As we have said many times, when one approaches a paradox, one is the closest to the truth. And Sasha adds in another place in the book. Different factions of Zetas and/or humans who are conducting various contact activities. Each of these groups has a different agenda. So is it a wonder that people think the ET issue is complex and confusing? This is particularly true when we learn that part of the so-called ET issue is not about ETS at all, but about time jumpers. Many of them are humans from the future. Moreover, they tell us that another thing they were doing from the future was to insert the Asian race into the melting pot of Homo sapiens when they saw that the evolution didn't work. Not only do the Asians have similarities with the Greys when comes to their physical appearance, but they are also more of a hive community, where the group means everything and the individual means less. I'm not saying this to insult Asian people, just as a matter of fact. They thought the Asian people would be the solution, but it wasn't. The Greys have always been fumbling in the dark, due to their lack of emotions and comprehension of their own past. One would think that even if they can't feel pain, which they can't in the sense we do it, they could at least notice that something is wrong when we do, during the abductions, and do something about it. Apparently, when they have humanoids with them at the abductions, something is done about it, thanks to the humanoids, but then the next time around when the Greys are alone with the abductee, they seem clueless again. How can something like that evolve, or change anything? To evolve as a species, you need to be able to learn these basic concepts, otherwise it's useless. And future history shows that it apparently is useless. Sasha says that humans will experience a leap in consciousness due to the Zetas' present interaction, but even if this is the case, it only propels us towards the machine kingdom, and we're running right into the arms of the Sirians. And the harvest, according to the Alpha Draconians, whom we are visiting in the next paper, started its first phase in 2011, when the first people were harvested. This means that evolved people who died around that time were harvested in the between lives area. Now we're supposedly only waiting for the super wave. If the reader still has doubts which future you want to experience, a future hybrid child named Ethel in Royals and Priests book tells us that in his reality there is no difference between technology and spirituality, because they have blended so much. Apparently, in his time they have also managed to extend their lives considerably with technology. Ethel says that he basically can stay in the same body as long as he wants, thousands, perhaps millions of years if he so wishes, and when he gets bored, he can choose another one. Sounds exactly like what the Sirians do. And in the case of Ethel and his likes, they are at a point in the future development where humans are almost all machine, and as long as you can repair machine body parts, you can hypothetically live forever. Besides, if time is not linear, we have a totally different ball game. Furthermore, Ethel says that the natural way to evolve is with technology, and we need outside help to be able to take the leap. 4. How a hybrid is created. Now the reader hopefully has a better comprehension of what I meant when I talked about the enhanced human, the evolved human, or even the new species. This is literally so, because our DNA structure is changing radically as we learn new things and start living more in line with the cosmos and less within the current societal structure. Most of us still need to have a job and a roof over our heads, but we have a better understanding of how things are set up here, and know the difference between the 4% universe the Sirians want us to see and experience, and the real, 96% universe. We also know what the goals of the channeled sources are, and we need to remember that our branch of the tree of life, a branch which is slowly but surely growing out, is the natural evolution. No future being whatsoever is going to tell me that we need more genetic manipulation to be able to evolve. The Pleiadians said recently that this is a living library after all, and generic engineering and manipulation has always been going on here, and always will. Still, they say, and I agree, we are now an evolving species and must be left alone to do our thing. Hence, we need to claim our sovereignty, just like I've stressed as well throughout these papers, and one of the reasons I got interested in LPGC and their projects, which were based on this same principle. We need to take a step outside of all agendas and create our own goals individually and as a soul group. We still have a few papers to go before level 3 is finished and what's been hidden deep inside of us has come to the surface. So I suggest we move on to explain a little bit about how human hybrids are created, the real process. Again, this comes from the Greys themselves, but is it true? I would say it is, because it makes sense, it fits, and it feels right. The process the Greys use when they genetically manipulate a race is told by Hironi, whom allegedly is the expert, being in charge of many of these projects. Here on Earth, the military has been involved in genetic engineering and manipulation for quite a while. But like with so many other things, there are always different factions, and each faction only knows so much. There is the mainstream faction, which basically doesn't know enough to succeed in this field, and we have the hidden section, which is overseen by military officers from the shadow government and the Syrians themselves. One faction is for the public, where a small percentage of what has been accomplished is released, so that the other faction can get more funding. Hironi says that the problem in the mainstream faction is that scientists only look in the physical realm, and therefore miss out on 50% of the process, or more. So now Hironi will reveal how to work with both the etheric and physical realms. The etheric levels, the etheric work is done on a meta-atomic level, where meta means beyond. It means it exists outside the physical dimensions, but exists here as well. The manipulation on this level is plasmic. Light plasma is induced in different areas to create specific coding, or for language. The physical adjacent to this non-physical state forms itself according to the light plasmic language that is set up. When they do their genetic work in the creation of hybrids, they first begin on the most basic of levels. They create a template around which physical life will eventually form itself. Chromosomes, RNA, DNA, what we call the genetic structure, represents some of the smallest genetic codes we can read right now. But there is a whole world beyond that, and that's where they begin. They start, first of all, by harnessing the template that exists for all forms of life in the reality the Zetas share with us. This template is a triadic structure that represents one polarity, its opposite, and the integration and the joining of the two. Life forms the way it does because of this template, which exists in the reality they share with us. They begin with the triadic template. Within the energy dynamic of this template they then insert plasmic light energy with the language encoded into it at the most basic levels. It is difficult to exactly describe what this language says, they tell us, because it is a language that does not exist in physical reality. Its components eventually instruct physical matter how to create body structures. The language first affects the non-physical, and then the physical realms. Work on the etheric levels can be compared to building blocks. From the most basic level, plasmic light language instructs the physical matter to arrange itself according to these etheric templates. They have been working on many different strains of hybrid beings to find the most resilient ones, so they alter the plasmic light language attached to the triadic template in order to find the most perfect body structure that can serve them. Physicality is always connected to the non-physical, so what is done in the non-physical always affects the physical realms. There may be, in our terms, a time lag between the non-physical work and the physical manifestation, but that is only because of the idea of growth in an exponential sense from non-physicality to physicality. Matter is matter because it has compressed itself enough from the energetic state to form a densified field. When the template is given enough light plasmic energy, it becomes compressed and enters the physical realm. This is the bridge between the etheric and the physical. The physical level, our scientists may think that the physical aspects are much more easily manipulated. But once they have what we would consider to be a fetus, they then can monitor and direct its biochemical development so it will have the right mixtures and proportions of chemicals needed to develop the type of being they would like to create. The physical genetic work continues throughout the life of the hybrid simply because they haven't perfected the strain. They must continue to achieve the perfection that they seek. This is done through experiments in neurochemicals, adrenal chemicals, and basic chemical function in the body. It is also achieved by directing various light and sound frequencies on the developing fetus that will give it the signature vibration it needs in order to develop according to their plans. On all levels, then, the genetic work is done. The etheric level is the most basic, but is instrumental in the forming of the physical level. So the above is, in general terms, how a hybrid is created, according to the Zetas. The questioner at one point is asking what the humans can gain from the visitations we currently have, and Sasha, the Pleiadian female, is the one who gives the answer. Again, we must understand that we must speak in generalities because each group has its own desires. They are always looking for ways to rectify their past. So the humanoids see this as a way to give back to humans what they perceive they've removed from Earth for thousands of years. Think and ponder this statement. Why do all these star beings have to come here and rectify their past? And if this really is what they're doing, what does the following statement from Sasha mean? Remember that the meta-humans, which are the Zeta/human hybrids, come back here in time in different stages of development and on different timelines. Therefore, they may have different agendas, even when they come as channeled sources. The meta-human from the future has several different agendas, but they are all intertwined. This has to do with stimulating the energy necessary in the individual or the mass conscious mind or a society to trigger the evolutionary process to make the leap. The Zeta Reticuli, even in the future, have not yet mastered the understanding of emotions, but they have learned the value to using empaths to translate to them what the human is experiencing. The humanoids take the emotional expressions from the human, synthesize them into a form that the Zeta Reticuli can identify with, and channel those emotions through themselves so that the Zetas can understand. Emphasis not in original. 15. So, their agendas may be different, but they are all intertwined. And then, the humanoids have the ability to take human emotions and funnel them through themselves so that the Zetas can understand. If they can do that, they can do exactly the same thing when they channel through a human vehicle. And this is precisely, just like I've said so many times, why the audience who listens to a channeled source can feel all this love and light inside themselves during a channeled session, when in fact the entities are not even able to feel emotions. In my papers I have talked a lot about possession and how entities can attach to humans if people are not protecting themselves. What do you think happens when a channeled source is transmitting all this love and light, which is nothing but human emotions that they steal and funnel back through the vehicle and into the minds of the audience? Well, people feel so good about this boost of energy that they temporarily leave their bodies. And what can happen when someone leaves their body unprotected? They put up a vacant sign on it, and entities feel free to enter the empty body. This is entity possession. This may be one reason why the source is funneling all this love and light through the audience, but not the only reason. Of course, they also want to win people over so they can harvest them. Does this mean that we can't listen to channeling anymore, because we may become possessed? Not necessarily. But it is important that you protest yourself by putting an imaginary bubble around you before you start listening to any of that kind of material. Not all of it will make you possessed, of course, and not everybody get possessed, either, when they leave their body, but what I'm saying is that there is a chance. And if it is the purpose of the source to possess people, they will do what they can to take advantage of the vacancy. Mother Earth will continue orbiting the Sun in all the different versions of herself. The machine kingdom will happen here and not on a third-party planet, and so will the splitting of worlds, where higher dimensional versions of Earth will exist simultaneously, and in the same space as the versions containing the machine kingdom. The only difference will be that they exist in different densities and dimensions, like Earth always has had its different densities and dimensions. The question is, which version do you want to live in? We have talked about many reasons why it's important that we do our inner work and how important it was to take advantage of the leap in consciousness and awareness that came, almost like a free ride, with the nanosecond. Not only because this is the natural way to evolve, and we need as many people as possible to start realizing what is going on so they can begin to work on themselves, but it's also been, and still is, a race against time. The future hybrid machine kingdom Zeta/human hybrids are doing exactly what we are doing, but they are doing it with technology. They, too, are trying to get as many people as possible to realize that we belong to a cosmic consciousness and that we need to reach for the stars so we can apply for membership in the galactic community. But there is a major difference. The steps they are taking will lead humanity to a community where we become members in different galactic federations. Most of those are just different names for the Syrian alliance. The Zetas are mentioning the Association of Worlds, where the end product, the Essassani Greys, are members. Indeed, Bashar and Sasha say that the Association of Worlds is the same as the Galactic Federation, which is the Syrian alliance. The following is what the Zetas are doing with humans right now as we speak. They are talking about thousands of people, but that was in the 1990s. Imagine how many they are now. This is why we can't win the race and hope for all mankind to evolve like we want to do it. This is why we simply need to do the best we can and affect as many as possible, as many as are willing to listen. Our job is not to force our ideas on others. All we can do is to work on ourselves, be of assistance when and where it's asked for, and that's it. The ripple effect will do the rest, and time will tell how many will go in this or that direction. We are facilitating something within you that is the culmination of a very ancient agreement. The genetic work on your planet with your species began from a more primitive form of life over 1 million of your years ago. At that time, it was not the Zeta Reticuli doing that work. In this time that you call the present, we are picking up where your forefathers have left off. But we also give you something. That something is more codes, more activation on the light plasmic language level. This is occurring with literally thousands of people on your planet. There will be a critical mass reached, and when this happens, the species leap will occur in force. What type of code? Can you explain the ideas that are represented there? Primarily, the code we are triggering within you is the recognition of yourselves as part of a galactic ecosystem, a working piece of the whole. We see the work we do with you as a galactic evolution, and since you've experienced only species planetary evolution, it is a new arena for you. But there are guides, there are facilitators who have been there before who assist you. You will begin to speak the same language symbolically. Do you mean in our thinking and feeling? Yes. In the first part of this quotation they are telling us that they are continuing the work of the Syrians, which basically means that they are working on behalf of the overlords, and that they are making changes to us, in spite of what they told us earlier. See the beginning of this paper. You can also see at the end of the quote that by coding us differently, they will alter our ways of thinking into thinking more collectively, and become more of a beehive collective, i.e. a social memory complex, and of course in a way that will fit into their agenda. If we let them do that, we are left with no choice. Can you see now why it is so important that I let people get the chance to take part of all this information? I haven't seen all this being revealed in its context anywhere else, and I mean the levels I3 as a whole, but as soon as I'm done, it will be, and I will feel more at peace. My next paper, which will finish the series on channeling, is going to be all about the Alpha Draconians. Believe it or not, but it will take a whole paper, and it is totally necessary. I have never seen such a revealing information anywhere else when comes to channeling and what the real purpose of the harvest is. We have already talked about that here, in relation to the information we get from the sources discussed thus far. But the Alpha Draconians take it 10 steps further, if I may say so. It's too much to include in this paper, so I decided to give this information a paper of its own. You will see what I mean when you get the chance to read it. V. Disclosure. People who are into channeling and have found it exciting may feel discouraged now after I've written these papers. Don't be. First of all, I wanted to inform people about the true nature of the harvest, and second, the more we learn about these things, the more we can use our discernment and figure out what information can be useful for us, and what is not. Even the most conspiratorial channel has good material in it which can be used for our growth. Again, let's never throw out the baby with the bathwater. I listen to channeled material myself and learn how to discern. The bottom line, however, is probably as follows: the star beings who are really genuinely here as our friends are still mostly lurking in the background without intervening. Some may have incarnated here in the same manner as we humans, and grown up here in order to directly assist, while others, most of them, are still observing. The latter are hoping that we can figure out on our own how to say no to the Syrian alliance, raise our frequency, evolve, and be ready to make contact with a galactic community. When we are ready, contact will happen on an individual basis with this galactic community, and the information will be shared on channels who can handle it and are prepared. This is already happening and has been for a while. So many people are talking about disclosure, which has become a subject with a capital D these days, and they are writing to the government, or even make appointment with our representatives to discuss the matter that the ET issue, which has been kept secret from humanity, now must be disclosed. There are those who want all files opened and let the ETs show themselves to the peoples of the world. I am sorry to make the reader disappointed again, if this is what you are hoping for, because the chance it will happen is next to zero. This is for several reasons, but the two most important ones are: 1. The government is hiding so many crimes on this subject, and many representatives in high positions are afraid for their lives if the UFO issue will be disclosed. They will do all that's in their power to keep the real X-Files hidden. And there are more people involved in the cover-up than we may think. However, there are factions of the military and the government who also want an end to secrecy and are working behind the scenes to make disclosure happen, but they tread lightly, because they have families and don't want to end up like JFK and others who have gone too far. Then we have something which is perhaps even more important. 2. What do you think would happen if ETs start showing up here on Earth? Many of them are interdimensional and materialize from thin air. Many may look like us, but not all of them will behave like us. Then two things are bound to happen, which are: A. People will freak out, because they are not ready. They will deny the truth as if their lives depended on it, because everybody knows they are demons, and many religious people will call them demons, devas, jinns, or whatever fits into their rigid belief systems. And they will demand that this horrific alliance with demons will stop. In the name of God they will invade the White House or whatnot and call everybody in there Satanists. Others will be scared out of mind, and our mental hospitals will be overfilled, and B. Most people's nervous systems can't handle the energy from an alien. These energies that mankind would have to deal with are much stronger than our own at this point, and we have not been trained and prepared for such an encounter. Many, if not most people's nervous systems would fry. So, before the positive ETs show up in our cities, mankind needs to be prepared, and this is something I will talk about in my book, which will follow upon level 3. So, in other words, disclosure in the sense most people think of it is not written in the stars at the moment. I have talked about the machine kingdom and a world ruled openly by negative ETs, so is that not a kind of disclosure, after all? Yes and no. Of course, it is disclosure in the sense that humankind will start mingling with this group of ETs directly, but they will live among us in enhanced human bodies that can handle their energies, and well established in those, they can hold back the powerful energies that are destructive to us, except when they want to show what they can do, or want to punish us. In these cases, people are bound to witness some phenomena they have so far only seen in movies. But remember that ETs walked among us in Sumerian times, and earlier. In those times, believe it or not, people's neurological systems were much stronger and they could more easily handle ET energies, because ETs were part of their daily life. For those who plan to come back to Earth and be part of building a higher density world, I would suggest you start preparing yourself for encounters that are much more beneficial for you than the Syrians. They are here in near-Earth space, just waiting for you to be strong enough for an exchange to take place, without any exterior motives. Those who plan not to come back to Earth still need to practice this for the same reason. Many of us will move on and perhaps start an interaction with the galactic community already after this lifetime, and at that time we need our personal issues resolved, at least those which hold our energies back. It's very important. That's why I, and many other researchers, have stressed how imperative it is that we take a look at our dark side, let them face the surface, take a look at them for what they are and let them go. This is the simple procedure that needs to be done right away if you haven't already started on it. And whatever comes up, it is nothing to be ashamed of. We all have done things we weren't proud of, which we throw down into the abyss of our minds, hoping to never have to dig them up again. Surprise, surprise! Now is the time. I know there are a lot of channeled material I haven't covered, the above is just a scratch on the surface. Some groups I will present in the Galactic Federation paper later on, but if I have missed your favorite channeled source, I am sorry. However, the ones I've mentioned are enough to dig into in order to understand the agenda. Love. Wes Penre.